Good afternoon, folks. This is John Rust on The John Rust Show on Freedom 95. Rust on the radio, broadcasting at 9:50 a.m. and 95.9 FM all across the fruited plain, as Rush Limbaugh used to say, of our beautiful state of Indiana. So in the studio today, I have Justin George. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, John. Good to be here with you all.
And Aiden Marietta.
It's always great to be here.
So as I was saying, welcome to the show, folks. This show is important to me because I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh almost all the time. And he talked about how great our country was because we are truly blessed to live in this beautiful nation. And, you know, we're at peak summertime right now. Everything is so stunning, you know, from the purple mountains majesty to quote America the Beautiful.
Yes.
We are so lucky to live in this wonderful country. Unfortunately, and the topic on our show today, we are facing a plague of locusts in Washington, D.C. These career politicians who are protecting child predators, child rapists. And so I want to get right into this. This is just completely terrible. Breaking news. House Republicans this past week have blocked an effort by Democrats to force the release of the Epstein files. So, Justin, what were specifically these charges?
Well, specifically, and it's very despicable and awful. It makes my stomach turn, to say the least. It was one count of sex trafficking of minors, and then one count of conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking of minors. And this is according to the U.S. Department of Justice website. They were looking into this, and the website goes on to talk about how Epstein would actually pay the victims, and he would specifically...
So it was paid prostitution.
Exactly.
Of underage girls.
Correct. And
as I understand it, as young as age 14. These are child predators. These are child rapists.
Yeah. It's evil. And the website goes to say that he specifically targeted them because of their young age and because of their vulnerability.
And just repulsive. And look at what's happening in Washington over this. So, Aiden, I mean, just look at what's happened.
Exactly. This is absolutely despicable, and we deserve accountability on this. And, of course, Epstein was connected with high profile. He was connected with one of the royals in Great Britain. Prince Andrew was the notorious one. And, of course, he had relationships with high-profile celebrities, business executives, politicians like Bill Clinton, for example.
Yeah, we need to know who flew down to that. I've seen pictures of this island, this Epstein Island. They call it Rape Island. It doesn't look like a place you'd really want to go to. It looks kind of scraggly. So you were going there for something other than the pina coladas.
Yeah.
You were
that
going
is if
there.
you even got those.
Right. And so, this is where I agree with Donald Trump Jr. This is a direct quote from Donald Trump Jr. Show us all the Epstein client list now. Why would anyone protect those scumbags? Ask yourself this question daily, and the answer becomes very apparent. He said that on July 8th, 2023, but it rings true today. We cannot just give a free pass on this. There's zero reason not to release the documents. And anyone blocking it is a scumbag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not 5D chess. Thomas Massey, he had a quote on that. Justin, I think you were going to read that off. Read that off for us.
Said, my late wife Rhonda with the MIT engineering degree used to say, what they're doing in D.C. isn't 3D chess. They're chewing on the checkers and arguing which tastes better, red or black. And that's exactly what they're doing.
That's the political class in Washington. They're sitting there chewing the black checkers versus red checkers and trying to discern if there's a taste difference. I wholeheartedly agree with Ken Colbert on this. He says Indiana representatives votes no to release the Epstein files. The House Rules Committee voted 7-5 to block an amendment by Ro Khanna for a full House vote on releasing the Epstein files. Guess who in our Indiana congressional delegation serves on that committee that voted to block it? Erin Houchin, our representative from the 9th District here in the state of Indiana. She voted no. She says she voted to protect child rapists. Pure and simple.
Yeah.
It's
And
evil.
I would just point out, since if the question, I'm sure other people would be questioning, who else of our delegation voted against it? And I would be happy to answer that question, but I'll say first and foremost that this is bad when even Elmo himself is on Twitter calling for the release of the Epstein files.
You mean tickle me, Elmo?
That's what you want to say. But I took a look, and I found, from what I could find, the 4 representatives I could find that did vote on the House floor against releasing the files were, as you said, Erin Houchin, Victoria Spartz, Jim Baird, and Rudy Yakum. I could not find any votes for the others of our Republican delegation. I'm going to assume they skipped or they were not able to vote.
Right.
So I'm not going to make an assumption on that. They probably weren't there for skipped with him. I will say, however, the nonpartisan organization or group called Epstein Justice has said of one of our senators, who I believe is a big fan of this show in Virginia, Senator Jim Banks, that he has not called for accountability in releasing the Epstein files. And I checked for myself to see if that is true. They have a graphic about it. And from what I can tell, I looked on all the socials. I looked on campaign and Senate socials. I have looked on Google. I have looked everywhere. And I cannot find any record of him demanding justice as a member of the General Assembly.
Well, he's stone silent because he only cares about his own skin and his own reelection and his own career.
But I have looked everywhere, and I cannot find any record of him saying that. Although I did find one record, and this is something I do agree with you on, Senator. This is one thing you've gotten right, is that Richard Levine is a man, and he is and that I will say he's right on.
Yes, he's
Absolutely.
a he.
He is a he. So that's one thing. That's one thing the senator got
even
right.
a broken clock is right twice a day.
That's right. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. That's
So this
exactly
past
right.
week, Republicans just blocked the release of the Epstein files. They didn't flinch. They didn't hesitate. They lined up and voted to keep the truth sealed. This is from Brian Allen. The client list is real. The cover-up is active. And the American people are watching. I'm watching. Everyone listening on the show is watching because we care deeply that everyone gets held accountable for child rape. Pure and simple.
Yeah.
And Representative Thomas Massey, he even said about if your representative won't sign the discharge petition, ask why. And that's a good question.
Well, he tweeted this out earlier in the week. We all deserve to know what's in the Epstein files, who's implicated, and how deep this corruption goes. Americans were promised justice and transparency. So this is he speaking. This is Thomas Massey speaking. We are introducing a discharge petition to force a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives on releasing the complete files. Absolutely. Amen. Why? Speak the truth and shame the devil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always. Always. You cannot cover up for child rapists. And why is the Indiana GOP doing that?
And may I just ask, of the 4 representatives that we do know that voted no on release, voted against releasing it, the 4 representatives that did vote, I asked them with all due respect, why would you vote to not see justice being served? What do you have to hide? Are there clients on there that are donors? We need to know.
Well, we have a 2-tiered justice system in the United States. We have a justice system for us, for you and me. And we pay the consequences. If we get caught speeding, we pay a speeding ticket. Absolutely. But if you're a gazillionaire or a billionaire and you're on that private jet to Epstein Island, and this wasn't a small private jet, folks. This was I think it was like a 737.
It was a big jet.
A big jet. And Lord knows what went on there. So this is from Elon Musk. He says, they arrested and killed Peanut. Folks, Peanut was a squirrel in the state of New York that the state of New York went into this person's house that had a pet squirrel and killed that squirrel. They took it out of the house and took it back to the facility, wherever it was, and killed the squirrel because it was not legally there.
Yeah.
So our government cares more about going in and killing pet squirrels than prosecuting anyone on the Epstein client list. And I'm going to repeat that, folks. More squirrels have been arrested and killed than anyone on the Epstein client list.
Let it sink in.
Yeah.
Really let it sink in. Because
Well, what are they protecting? Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice, Maxwell, is ready to reveal the truth of the pedophile client list, say insiders. So why are the Republicans blocking her? She wants to go in front of the U.S. House of Representatives and speak the truth.
Here's my question. Here's the thing. Do we think she's going to be able to even make it to the hearing, knowing What happens to...
Well, you know,
That's a good question.
so the people are already saying she did not suicide herself.
I would probably say that too.
So, folks, if you're not completely familiar with what's happened, Jeffrey Epstein went to jail over these charges, and he mysteriously died in prison. Some are saying it was suicide, and some are saying he was killed.
Yeah, hashtag Epstein didn't kill himself was a big trending thing.
And so you see a lot of this in social media, and so they're worried about this Maxwell being next because she knows very rich, very wealthy, very powerful people that were on this list, and she's not afraid to name them, and she's still alive today.
That is amazing
And so,
how she's even survived.
well, we want to make
It
it
is.
on record in July of 2025. She is still alive. Let's see what happens, you know. But she at least wants to come forward and speak the truth. Why are the Republicans in Congress so opposed to that? You know, one of the reasons I got into politics, folks, 2 years ago now, was I am not afraid to speak the truth and shame the devil. I am not afraid of anyone who will perhaps come in the future and try to go after me in politics because I don't care. I'm not in this for my own career. I'm in this to do what's right for all Hoosiers. Pure and simple. Unfortunately, our Indiana GOP delegation, when the time came, look at Erin Houchin. She voted to protect these greaseball billionaires rather than protect children against these child predators. It is just insane.
And as
It
I
is
pointed out, she's one of the four that I listed.
right. So, folks, we will get right back into this. Stay tuned. This is the John Rush Show on Freedom 95. Welcome back, folks. This is John Rust on the Radio on Freedom 95, 950 AM and 95.9 FM, broadcasting all across the fruited plain of beautiful, back home again, Indiana. Gosh, we love this state. It's so beautiful.
We do.
So in the first segment, we're talking about the Epstein files. Second segment, I'm actually going to go into something different. We're going to talk about this massive government spending bill that just passed recently.
Oh, dear.
It was passed, and then Jim Banks and Todd Young and the entire Indiana delegation, they went on vacation for 2 weeks. They voted to put us on a path for another $20 trillion in debt, and they disappeared and went on vacation. I don't know if they went to Epstein Island, but they went somewhere. So, folks, this bill that passed, they're all trumpeting it and saying, oh, it had tax cuts. Yes, those tax cuts absolutely had to pass, absolutely. But the baloney part, and I'm using the polite term, the baloney part was where they put in all this massive debt. $5 trillion of new government ceiling debt approved, but it really puts us on a path for $20 trillion in new debt. And guess what? They're all talking about, oh, how popular it was. No, it was not. This is from a direct poll by the Terrence Group. Of all voters, 58% of all Americans opposed that bill because of the debt. They're all hiding, it's a fig leaf behind the tax cuts, which were important, and the border security, which is important. But that is no excuse to come in and throw the debt so high. When Elon Musk easily identified $2 trillion, and he was on the path to identify $2 trillion in spending. We would have had a budget surplus this year had Elon Musk still been in there cutting government waste. But instead, the establishment in Washington said, no, we don't want to cut waste because that's our grift. That's our money tree. We don't want to have anyone shaking that other than ourselves so that we can continue to make Hoosier taxpayers more and more in debt. Always remember, folks, when Todd Young and Jim Banks were sworn into Congress in 2017, your share personally as a taxpayer of the nation's debt was $170,000 per taxpayer. Today, that is $323,000 per taxpayer. And if you follow what the big, bad boondoggle bill puts into place, it will easily put us into $500,000 per taxpayer of nation's debt. The only way that will be paid is through inflation and through future tax increases for you and your children and your children's children. Rob Kendall likes to use the word, these are professional dine and dashers. It's like going into a restaurant and ordering the most expensive items in the restaurant, the best ribeye steak or filet mignon. And then when the check comes, they just get up and leave. And your kids are going to have to pay for that filet mignon that these congressmen and senators are eating at in D.C. It is so sad.
It is sad, and I was thinking about that yesterday. I was in the grocery store, and the prices, even with the
look
sales,
at what
going up.
ribeye steak is. I mean, that's my favorite cut personally, and wow, it is expensive.
It's very bad, and I will just point out that Lindsey Graham, one of
Lindsey Grahamnesty.
Lindsey Grahamnesty, that's
somebody
right.
that Jim Banks himself has supported, was there for the
and
signing.
ran around with in Indianapolis. I don't know if they shared the same hotel room, but they were at an event together in Indy.
Yeah, that
I don't
doesn't
know
surprise
if
me.
for fundraiser,
And
I guess.
from what I understand, I believe another person who did vote for the bill, who did not voted but supported this bill, by his own statements, and as somebody we talked about on the show who's wanting to run in 28, I believe that would be Carlin the Charlatan Yodeler.
Carlin the Charlatan
It's
Yodeler.
been a little while since we talked about him, but I do know
who
he
voted
wasn't-
for all these local taxes that Hoosiers are now facing.
and also voted for a resolution, or
Praising
authored
Obama.
it, praising
President
President
Obama.
Authored
President Barack Obama.
praising Barack
He called
Obama.
for he was thinking, his thought was Todd Young was not going to vote for the bill, and he kept demanding, he's like, pass the bill, or pass the bill, and saying that it wasn't conservative to not vote for the bill. So by his definition, Warren Davidson, Thomas Massey, and Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, another one who surprised me, all three of them, I guess, are not conservatives by the charlatans' standards.
There is no way you could vote for that big, awful bill and call yourself a conservative. There is just no planet in the galaxy where you can increase the deficit so exponentially and continue to grow government exponentially
And think about Brian Fitzpatrick.
and call yourself a conservative.
Exactly.
It's false. It's fake. It's how all these politicians, they go to Lincoln Day dinners and they thump their chest. Oh, we're going to cut government. We're going to cut government waste. Hogwash. They cut minuscule parts and then they trumpet, just pennies, where Elon Musk was finding trillions. He was on the path, again, to find $2 trillion, with a T, $1 trillion in government waste. Folks, I don't care if, who you are. Government waste is still government waste. The Pentagon should not be paying $100,000 for a bag of washers that you can get at a hardware store for $2. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
And they all hid behind this unelected Senate parliamentarian who gutted core parts of the reconciliation bill, including the ban on food stamps and Medicaid for illegal aliens. That's hogwash. Jim Banks, Todd Young, Thune could have easily replaced that parliamentarian on a whim. It doesn't even require a vote.
And I would just point out, she was appointed by Harry Reid, I believe it was 2011,
Yep.
after the Republicans had the Tea Party wins. And they could have, when John Thune and Harry Reid and everybody else, when they got the majority in 2014 for the Senate, McConnell could have fired her. They all had the chance to fire her, and they never did. So why the sudden change of heart? That's pretty interesting.
This is from Michael Flynn Jr. Congress is waiting out Donald Trump. Pure and simple. They don't care about his agenda, only their own. They only care about their election. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Again, Congress is scheduled today to only work 13 of the next 65 days.
Sweet gig.
Right. So Jim Banks, Lindsey Grahamnesty, Todd Young, and Thune, they're in a hot tub somewhere on some island. I don't know which one.
I don't know either. I'd love to know.
Be nice to know.
Release the list.
Yes. I agree. Let's see.
Well, we have to work to pay the taxes that they keep running up on all this massive spending. It is absolutely insane how much government debt is increasing. And they're all saying, they're saying it's coming down. No, that's hogwash. And what was in that bill that Jim Banks and Todd Young voted for, and Erin Houchin, it included funding for child sex transition.
Disgraceful.
Your tax dollars, this is from Billboard Chris on Twitter, your tax dollars will be paying for children to receive puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones and surgeries. As I understand it, girls as young as the age of 14 will be able to have their breasts removed, paid for by the government.
Absolutely evil. And
And Jim Banks and Todd Young and Erin Houchin voted for that.
Oh, may I just point out that bill also provides funding for Planned Parenthood, despite what we were told?
Well, it got thrown out by court, right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
But,
and it was just for 1 year.
Fine.
It was all hogwash.
Yeah.
But
they'll be funding it again.
they'll be fun. They all voted it to fund it back in March of this year.
Yeah.
Every one of them. They're Jim Banks, Todd Young, Erin Houchin. They all voted in March of this year for Biden level funding of the government, and that included funding for Planned Parenthood.
Which is ironic.
And
because
so they
we
come
talked
here and
about
thump
Biden.
they come here and they thump their chest, oh, I'm against abortion, and then they go and vote to pay for it.
Yeah.
And they'll talk about how bad Biden was, but yet they do the same funding levels, like you just said.
Yeah.
Right.
Say one thing and do another. It's
You know,
all smoke and mirrors.
This is from Daniel Horowitz. For Republicans who don't believe anything and the pursuit of power, just for power's sake, there is no end to the number of excuses to not fulfill a mandate they never believed in. And the key part there, folks, is they don't believe in the mandate. They don't believe in smaller
They
government.
just used it to get elected.
They use it to get elected, and then all they care about is their careers and what their Starbucks tastes like in D.C., I guess.
My question is, I thought Starbucks was for liberals.
Yeah.
So they claim.
Well, I like McDonald's coffee just fine, so.
Yeah.
Me
I don't
too.
drink coffee, but McDonald's is better.
I do in the morning, and McDonald's coffee is one of the best.
Well, this is from Warren Davidson. This is how big are federal deficits. Currently, the United States is expected to spend nearly $2 trillion more than the revenue collected by the federal government. And remember what I said, folks. Elon Musk was on the path to identify $2 trillion in cuts. So we would be at a even no deficit this year had Elon Musk been enabled to continue doing what he was doing. However, the big, quote-unquote, beautiful, awful bill passed. That's going to add at least $500 million. And let's just assume it only increases a half of that, $250 billion. This is from Warren Davidson. You know how you would pay for that if you had to pay for it today, which we're not? That would be a $4.45 tax on every single credit card transaction for this year. If it was going to eliminate the $2 trillion they're really adding to the debt this year, that would be a $36 per credit card transaction fee this year. So if you're going to McDonald's and you buy like me, a double quarter pounder value meal for $14 or whatever it is, you're going to be faced, if you were paying for what the government was doing, a $36 upcharge. Thanks to Jim Banks, Todd Young, and Erin Houchin.
Thanks for making my McDonald's more expensive.
And it's hidden. And that's why that value meal, quote unquote, value meal is $14 now or $12, whatever it is.
Depends on the location where you're getting it.
Right. Because of inflation. I remember when that was $6.
It was nice.
And it's more than double that now. Well, this is from John Rich on Twitter. He says, I estimate well above 90% of Republicans and Democrats are either leveraged, blackmailed, or bought and paid for by entities outside of our country. You want to know why we have this, and I'll say manure show, I'll use the polite term, on our hands? Because almost every one of them answer to someone other than we the people. Folks, when we come back, we'll get right back into this. This is John Rust on the Radio. Welcome back, folks. This is John Rust on the Radio, Freedom 95, 950 AM and 95.9 FM on your radio dial as you drive up and down I-65, I-70, I-465, soon to be tolled by our great state GOP here in Indiana. Ugh.
Hip, hip, hooray, am I right?
Yay for tolls, right? That's what we're supposed to say.
So in the last segment, we were talking about the big, awful bill that Jim Banks, Todd Young, and Erin Houchin just voted for. That bill, as I said earlier, will continue to pay for kids to receive puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, sterilizing them permanently for their life, paid for by the federal government with your tax dollars and your kids' tax dollars and your grandkids' tax dollars without the government spending. And I'm bringing this up again because I was wrong. I said that girls as young as 14 could have their breasts removed with federal funds. I was wrong. It's actually 12.
Oh,
This is from Billboard Chris. Your tax dollars will pay for girls as young as 12 to have their breasts cut off. Thank you, Jim Banks. Thank you, Todd Young. Thank you, Erin Houchin. Shame, shame, shame.
Yes, shame on them for doing that.
You know,
Don't call yourself a conservative and vote for
that was out of the House bill at least, and the Senate put it back in.
of course they did.
That's how they roll.
That
And may I just point out the so-called holdouts that were like Don Bacon and Tom Tillis, shame on them as well, because they were pretending to be something they're not, and then they're like, these are like two rhinos, and then they're like, oh, the PBS, we want PBS funding, we want this, that, and then they voted for the thing anyway because it had PBS funding, and shame on them.
Yeah, shame on them.
So, folks, in economic news, in June 2025, the jobs 1 month net change. Guess what? Manufacturing jobs lost 7,000. Mining and logging down 2,000. Professional and business services minus 7,000. Guess who grew? Government. More than 73,000 new jobs in government. You know, the Republicans have the presidency, the Senate, and the Congress, and government continues to expand and grow. We need to, at least cut back to pre-COVID, at least.
Yeah.
And that's the benchmark, and that should be a no-brainer, easy.
Should be easy.
And may I just point out, Jim Banks was trying to act all high and mighty that he told some fired HHS worker the whole, you deserved it because you seem like a clown, smirked at him, made that his profile.
Well, they
picture.
probably just went around and got hired on somewhere else because there's 73,000 more jobs.
So it's like, oh, that was all for show. You were back. You
It's
put it back
all for show.
in. And besides, well, even then, I mean, if that's that's how he treats people at home. So that's unacceptable either way.
Well, he's a Virginian now, so at least we don't have to see him.
Like
Yeah.
employees.
So,
and-
folks, a highlight of the show is, unfortunately, I want to talk about inflation and what is going on and how it affects your pocketbook. Just this past week, the cost of a first-class stamp went up to 78 cents. Okay, so I'm going to put this in perspective. In 1952, I'm going to give you two prices. A first-class stamp was 3 cents. A dozen eggs wholesale was 50 cents a dozen. Adjusted for inflation up until to today, that stamp should be 36 cents. And eggs should be $6.50 wholesale. They're well under $3. They're half of that because of the wonder of free markets and capitalism. Eggs are a bargain. Stamps should be, if adjusted for inflation to $19.52, they should be 36 cents today. 36 cents today. Instead, they're more than double that. Whatever the government touches gets worse. You know, if we have 78-cent stamps, if the government was doing the egg farms, you'd be paying $15 retail for a dozen eggs today if you extrapolate what the postage stamp price has done. And so this past week in the state of Indiana, our lieutenant governor was bragging about the Indiana state GOP funding broadband internet access for people in rural areas. Guess how much they're spending per person? $4,429.57. According to Rob Kendall, is what the math is for what they're spending for new internet access in rural areas. Folks, Elon Musk has an easy solution to that. He can do it for a fraction of that. It's $400 for a Starlink.
That's a good idea. And I will say, I'm not opposed to
Let the
providing-
market take care of it.
I
Keep
agree
the
with
government out of it.
That's my view. I mean, my view is I don't oppose expanding access to internet. I think we need, in this economy, we need it. But Starlink, that's
But
the way
it
to
should
do
be
it.
for
Starlink-
Starlink can do it for $400, and the state of Indiana spending $4,429
Do it for 400
per
and save
installation. So in Indiana news, what happens when you type in sponsorship? This is from Indy Reporter. This is a very important Twitter website, and Rob Kendall's been pushing this, and I'm pushing this. This is at Indy_reporter_ on Twitter. Indy Reporter on Twitter. What happens when you type in sponsorship in the IEDC transparency portal? 43 results. Millions of dollars spent on tickets, hotel room suites. Again, probably, I guess, I don't know which island they're going to. But our favorite, this is from Indy Reporter, The IEDC, your taxpayer dollars, spent $1 million to have the IEDC logo on a Formula race car and racewear. $1 million.
Why is this even necessary? It's
And
not.
so that means in state taxes, there had to be, if you do the math, more than 50 people had to work their entire lives paying Indiana state tax to pay for that logo on that race car. And I saw a picture of it. It's so small you can't even see it.
So what was even the point? There was no point.
The point is Indiana GOP has so much money they don't care.
Exactly. They care about themselves. They don't care about us.
They're going to blow $1 million for putting a logo so tiny on a race car you can't even see it.
I would just point out we used to have an actual, I think it was an Indiana Department of Commerce, and then they decided to turn it into the IEDC to make it operate somehow as a private company. Well, I think if we went back to my proposition, go back to a regular Commerce Department if needed, have a secretary, have a very small staff, and have a very small, maybe like 5 people, then have an inspector general and an auditor for transparency.
The IEDC should be about welcoming new business in Indiana. It should not be about picking winners and losers in our economy today. And that's what's happening. And so unfortunately, what's happening is, the contracts are going to people who have paid political donations to our elected leaders here in the state of Indiana. That's the problem. It shouldn't be that way. Unfortunately, if you're a Hoosier business and you're paying your taxes, you're helping subsidize someone else funding one of our candidates. And that's wrong.
Yeah.
I don't care how you say it. This is, again, from Indy Reporter, talking about the data centers, which are all the rage amongst our political elite, which suck up so much power that now we're talking about having to build nuclear power plants in the state of Indiana to power all these places. Guess who's going to pay for that? You and me. Folks driving up and down I-65, you're not only going to have a toll.
Yeah.
You're going to have a higher electric bill now to pay for all these data centers that really don't hire that many people. The people they do hire, they come from India.
Yeah.
On these special visas.
They don't help us here.
It's like give it to Hoosiers. Don't give it to.
Why are they subsidizing that? So listen to this. These data centers get a 20 to 50 year sales tax exemption on all equipment. And they also get a sales tax exemption on all their hardware. So if you buy $500 million of hardware for a data center, that's $35 million in taxes the state of Indiana is not collecting. That's money you're going to have to pay for because you have to pay for the roads to that place.
Yeah.
Someone has to. And that's why our gasoline tax is so high. That's why Indiana has the 4th highest gasoline tax in the country. And we are taking in record amounts of revenue from that, but it's not enough for these politicians. They want to keep spending, and so now, because they have so much money to slather all over their friends, I'll use that word, because that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Well,
they want a toll in addition to that, so they have even more money to slather around.
So now for those of you in your local roads, get ready because you're going to have a lot of traffic coming up up there.
Welcome to Indiana. So on these data centers, their electricity will not be taxed either. So that's more that Hoosier taxpayers are going to have to pay for it. So not only are they getting subsidized electricity, they don't have to pay tax on it. You're going to have to pay for it. And you don't even get the jobs. The jobs are going to India.
That is.
This is from Jacob Stewart, who now works for the Indianapolis Star. Congratulations, Jacob. On Twitter, he says, data centers are inevitable national security assets in the artificial intelligence arms race. But monopoly utilities shouldn't force Indiana consumers to bear the cost of meeting their demand. And this is from Jacob again, Jacob Stewart from the Indy Star. I came up with an $8 billion price tag for doing so, but knowing Indiana, it will run likely double that.
And these are jobs that could be filled by Hoosiers who are looking for work right now. You could hire them, you could train them, and they'd be ready and willing and able to do those jobs. And yet, they're getting people from outside the country to do it for you.
And then what I don't like about the IEDC is Hoosiers aren't even eligible for some of these jobs. This is from Ken Colbert. From Indiana, SB 361 from the 2022 development bill. Imagine an Indiana state law passed by elected officials, including using Hoosier tax dollars, but it excludes Hoosiers from benefiting. Well, that's just it. That and the Indiana Economic Development Corporation is behind it. So the program pays a stipend to entice remote workers to move to Indiana, paying for their moving expenses, to assist with housing. But guess what? There's a catch. You cannot participate if you already live in Indiana and want to relocate within Indiana state boundaries. It is only for non-Hoosiers. And this is, again, from Ken Colbert. The IEDC is paying $10,000 per remote worker to entice people to work here. But you're not eligible for it. You just have to pay for it.
That's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, when we come back, we'll dig right back into this. This is John Rust on The John Rust Show on Freedom 95. Welcome back, folks. This is John Rust on the Radio, Freedom 95, broadcasting at 9:50 a.m. and 95.9 FM, all across, as Rush Limbaugh would say, the fruited plain of our beautiful state of Indiana. And my gosh, in July, it is so beautiful with all the green, beautiful corn, the grass. It's a lot of mowing. My yard, I think I've cut it twice the past week because it is growing so fast, but that's wonderful for the crops. We're going to have a nice corn crop with how we are getting all this wonderful moisture now.
That'll be nice to look forward to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But not all is well, unfortunately. Guess what? This is from Indiana Public Media. Indiana assessed value grows 12% as property tax changes take effect. Remember how the Indiana GOP was running ads on stations all across the state of Indiana saying, we are cutting your property taxes? What utter hogwash. Utter hogwash. I saw the average. I think your real estate taxes were going up $900 on average per taxpayer. It was at least $800. And they're giving you a $300 rebate and saying that's a tax cut.
Yeah, $300 if you're lucky.
Right. It is all about, unfortunately, the Indiana GOP is only about expanding government and feeding the government beast. They don't care about the taxpayers. It's all about just spending recklessly.
And there's no transparency with any of the spending either.
Well, and there's a lot of stupid stuff going on too. You know, what I don't like in the state of Indiana is we have wonderful coal mines producing coal-fired electric generating plants in southwestern Indiana that are being phased out early to make all these quote-unquote green targets on climate change and all that nonsense.
I say keep them until the end of their service life. There's no reason to get rid of them.
And rebuild them.
Let's build new ones. We need clean
Exactly.
We need clean American
Coal is safe. It is clean. There is zero reason not to do it. Nuclear sounds great in theory. You know, nuclear power can be awesome, but everything has to be perfect every time.
Yeah.
And coal is reliable.
And coal's reliable, and it is inexpensive. It is cheaper than nuclear. It is cheaper than any other type of electricity. Why aren't we doing that? Listen to this, folks. In the state of Tennessee, new coal mining permits have been approved in Tennessee to boost America's energy independence. Why aren't we doing that here in the state of Indiana?
We should.
This is from the Department of Energy in our federal government, and it was issued on July 8th, 2025. Coal mining operations will create new jobs and support the local economy. The Department of Interior has given the green light to Hurricane Creek Mining, LLC, to mine coal on Bryson Mountain in Claiborne County, Tennessee. The project will produce up to 1.8 million tons of coal over the next 10 years. The coal from this mine will support important industries like steelmaking and power generation. That is America first, because those are great paying jobs.
And that we could use jobs like that here in our state.
Yes.
For Hoosiers, not for people from India.
Exactly.
That are, want to come in on an H-1B whatever visa.
And that's one of the reasons why, just like you said, I don't like the IEDC, because
So it just makes you wonder who will get all those nuclear plant jobs they're talking about.
It's a good question.
I'd love to know.
Indiana, unfortunately, I've come to start calling it Taxachusetts. Unfortunately, and that's really saddens me to say that, because I remember back in the 80s, a lot of people like me, we were making fun of Massachusetts for all their taxes.
Michael Dukakis got made fun of by Dan Quayle because he pointed out it was called they called it Taxachusetts under Dukakis.
So guess what we're paying in gasoline tax? This is disgusting. This is from Justin Memes on Twitter. 90 cents a gallon in total in taxes. Why does the Indiana GOP hate us so much? This is a breakdown of the Indiana gas tax. 36 cents a gallon as of July 1st for the state excise tax. The gasoline sales tax is 17.8 cents per gallon. The federal gas tax is 0.18 cents per gallon. So that's a total of 72 cents per gallon. And then when you put the sales tax on it, that's 90 cents a gallon, which makes Indiana the fourth highest taxed gasoline state in the United States. We are Taxachusetts. And now they want to toll us as well. They want to toll 465, I-70, I-65, I-74. Every single mile of interstate in the state of Indiana, the Indiana GOP just authorized the governor to toll. No further permission required. Well, I have billboards going up over this because I want people to say, hey, stop this. My goal is to get the at least the tolls stopped. Number one, no tolls on Indiana interstates. They have already been paid for by the fourth highest gasoline tax in the country. Stop it. Get over it. Stop it. We don't need to take that money and spend it elsewhere. We need to spend this gasoline tax money on maintaining our roads.
And people will rightfully avoid those tolls, so there may not be money coming from anywhere. And not only that, what that does when they avoid it, local roads, you're going to have a lot more traffic because of that.
Yeah.
Well, they want more money for the IEDC.
Yeah.
That's what the genesis of the toll roads is all really about.
And think about
So I guess, I was talking about the $1 million they spent on a stupid race car somewhere. The Indiana Economic Development Corporation, they spent $21,000 flying their buddies to a college football game in Washington, D.C. I'd like to know who was at that game.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can
I'm
find that out.
legitimately interested.
Yeah.
I want to know who was playing, too.
Well, they have money to blow $21,000 on a football game.
But they can't fix our roads.
But we don't need tolls if they have money to throw $1 million away advertising on a sports car, or $21,000 for some whoever to go attend a football game somewhere. We are taxed enough. The government of Indiana spends enough. We should be spending less. Like I said before, we should at least be going to pre-COVID levels. This is from the Indy Star. The next time you see a huge data center pop up in your backyard, enjoy it because you're paying for it. I'm a conservative. I'm a bedrock conservative.
Same here.
But they are absolutely right where the Indiana Economic Development Corporation has just went off the tracks on what the original purpose was. Mitch Daniels brought it in because he wanted something to welcome Indiana businesses, not to funnel money to select businesses.
Exactly, that's what
that are going to cost Hoosiers more, like these data centers, which will only cost more in massive new electric charges because they use so much power. You can't imagine how much some of these.
Exactly. And before Governor Daniels, we just had a standard commerce department, and then he wanted to turn it into something that operated like a private company. And it was started with good intentions. I want to make that clear. And I'm sure it did good things at the beginning, but it needs, in my opinion, this is just my personal opinion, it needs to go because it's become a behemoth. It's not doing what it was set out to do, and it's straying away from the vision Governor Daniels had.
Exactly.
Well, my opinion is let free enterprise take care of the problem.
Yeah.
And I have great news on that. Waffle House has just announced as of June 2nd, that the egg surcharge is off the menu. Nice. I was just at the Walmart here in Franklin. Eggs are $2.97. I mentioned this earlier, if government was in egg farming, you'd be paying $16 or $15 a dozen for those eggs.
They'd probably charge more if they got their way.
Right.
They would.
Well, they'd put a toll on them. For the chickens, when they go to lay the egg, they're going to have to pay a toll.
And I know when Ethan Hatcher was here, we said they wouldn't let us drive cars. They'd turn into bike lanes like in Indianapolis or force us on Indigo.
But folks, I do want to say egg prices are coming down. I don't know for how long. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has changed policy. If you remember, back in March, I announced that the Trump administration had announced that American farmers would finally be able to vaccinate their chickens against bird flu. They have changed on that. So we are importing eggs from Mexico now to keep egg prices down. But guess what? Mexico vaccinates their chickens against bird flu. We're not allowed to. We have to kill our chickens if they get bird flu. Mexico doesn't. That is not right.
I agree.
We should be exactly like Mexico. We should have a plentiful egg supply. I want to get eggs, much, much cheaper.
Absolutely.
And until we have a bird flu vaccine used by all American farmers, this is going to keep happening. Unfortunately, we have competition in Arizona, and unfortunately, they just lost almost all of their birds to bird flu, over 6 million chickens. Had they been able to vaccinate, we would have a much more plentiful egg supply, and the price of eggs at the retail store would be even lower. So, folks, just remember, if the government was in the egg business, you'd be paying $15 a dozen. We've got it down below 3 today, but I think it should be lower. Yes. And if we had vaccines, we would absolutely have a lower price. So, folks, I want to close with my father's favorite Bible verse, which is, he has been putting on egg cartons since at least 1981. If you all recall, last week I interviewed my mom about it, and she was talking about that Bible verse. It is Psalm 118, verse 24. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Folks, you all have a great weekend. This is John Rust signing off on Rust on the Radio. I'll see you next week on the radio.